Imagine if you had socialized medicine or something like that. You know what I mean? Uh, that would be terrible. The free market wouldn't dictate the prices. Well, the free market is dictating the price of gas right now. So what's your problem?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's the way it goes. And so I mean, it's a capitalism's a two-way street. Whenever there's not enough of stuff, it's expensive, and that's the way. I don't get that. I don't understand that. But anyway, everybody's worried about the price of things in America. That the
We're in the middle of the biggest cost of living thing ever at the moment. Well, since the 80s.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? I remember the late 70s, early 80s, and I mean the double digit. I mean, I remember when. I mean, like I was too young, but I remember whenever a house mortgage was over 10%. It was like in the 12 to 14% for a house mortgage. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
in a way, it's like, yeah, it's shite right now, but relatively speaking, it's not more shite. But you wouldn't know that if you had really thought about it. You know, every time they ever talk about it, what's the highest price since here, since then. I'm convinced that the news just basically wants to make you feel like everything is shite all the time.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. It's fear mongering. They want to, it's afraid and desperate at all times.
Yeah. I mean, heaven forbid you actually feel happy for 5 minutes.
Yeah. God forbid that. That's like their biggest fear is that you wake up one morning and like, you know what, life isn't so bad. I'm totally pretty happy with the way things are going right now. They don't
Yeah.
want that.
Yeah. You
They
get
want you
up.
to be like, oh my god, Muslims are coming to eat all our guns. Socialist Muslims are coming to eat our guns.
Well, that's it.
And on the left, it's like, you're going to live an intolerant, desolate nightmare
Well, I mean,
where
that's it.
people won't use the right pronouns.
Well, oh, the pronoun thing's starting to get to me, brother. I mean,
I
I'm
don't mind. I don't mind like the transsexual pronouns. What's pissing me off is these assholes on TikTok that want me to use pronouns for trans demon, trans insect, and trans species, elf, trans elf. People that want me to use pronouns for those things can fuck right off. Okay?
well,
If you identify as a girl, I'll say she, her, whatever you want. But if you identify as a demon, get fucking help.
yeah.
I am
I've
transphobic of trans demons, trans insects, and trans stupid people.
I have not I've not come across that yet, and I would have to admit, you probably have a lot more tolerance than I would because at this point in time, like I just said the other day, I'll just call you it then. If you're not, and then I was
Yeah, you
told
can't do that either. They're
no.
like, well, I'm not an it. How dare you?
Well, yeah,
You
but
got to
here's
use the right pronoun.
yeah, but you see, the thing about it is, it's not a question of him or her, right? Him or her have sex connotations. It is supposed to be thought of as a thing, right? However, if you think about it in the English language, and I might be fucked up, and somebody, if this is an offensive thing to you, and this is you find this messed up, and okay, that's fine. But here's my logic behind it, and I mean, I don't mean that's fine that I've offended you. I mean, I'm sorry, but um, like they or them, for example, is it could be referring to a person or a thing, right? So referring to somebody as they or them does not necessarily mean that it is a person. It could be a thing. So saying that something isn't it is just saying something is a thing and that you don't know what I mean, it's not I mean, is it anti-humanistic? That's the question. Is that but I guess in your case, whenever you're saying that, you are referring to people who are defining themselves as not human. So then
Yeah,
it would
that's
be
exactly
appropriate.
what.
I mean, that's from a
And just
from,
these
from a question
people,
of logic.
how much energy do they get used every day, waking up, going on social media to find something to be offended by? It just,
Well, yeah. I mean, here from a serious standpoint, this is where the backlash comes from. You know what I mean? The problem with it is, and I from this is my opinion that once you start going to the point where it's just like, okay, that's it, rules are off, no rules. It's just all. I mean, you can't tell to. I mean, social norms take a lifetime to, you know, to learn, right? What does that say there? I can't. I'm sorry.
and
I
you
can't.
can't even tell them to go kill themselves anymore. That's
Well, yeah.
Gabby. I mean,
Well,
you never really could do that.
no.
That's just that's a bit far, Gabby. But
Yeah, but I
I
mean,
get what you're
you know, but what I'm saying is from that standpoint, I know, and I think you can. I think you could always say, "I'll tell somebody go fuck off or go fuck yourself." I mean, you know, that's never going to go away. That sort of brutality in language is always going to be acceptable because, you know, people like to have that sort of way of you know, getting rid of their frustration. But what I'm saying is okay. So you know, you learn your whole way how to do things. There's etiquette and things like that. Is all that pointless? Maybe, but maybe it isn't. But you know, so but at the same time, point in time, you can't tell people. I mean, you know, you can. You could say, okay, this is the way we're going to do it. This is the new
yeah.
rules of how you're supposed to refer to people. But believe me, the thing about it is okay. While that's being said, somebody's going to slip. You know what I mean? I mean, like I said, I'm 50. If you tell me that the rules are different and you explain to me why it makes sense, if it makes sense, I'll go along with it, just like most people.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
but if it doesn't make sense, and that's the way it is. But I mean, but give people a break who are trying to change. You know what I mean? That's part of the thing. Like if you know, like I've been around some really liberal campuses and stuff like that, and colleges and stuff like that, and it's just like if you make a mistake, like the sword of Damocles falls. It's almost like they're waiting for you to fuck it up, so that they can just freaking berate you. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And that's what I'm
Like
saying.
it's what they want is an excuse
Yeah.
to yell at you.
And
Alan, we're not talking about the transgenders in different sports. We're talking about people that are obviously doing it just for attention.
right.
Transgenders and
Well,
trans
yeah.
We're not touching the whole transgender subject. You know, be who you want to be. I don't give a shit. But
Yeah.
don't expect me to call you by a made-up pronoun that you just made up and didn't tell me existed.
Right. And for what we're, I mean, and that's the thing that's a funny thing about it. I mean, how much do we live in sort of our own little worlds where we use certain languages? I mean, like even in Bigfoot or paranormal world or whatever, we all have our own little language what we use. You know what I mean? That doesn't make sense, right? I mean, even if you use that in the past, I've always said, and Sam's always said this as well. Why do we say mind speak in the Bigfoot world? Why do we say that? In any other science, paranormal science, we would say telepathy. We would say that in UFOs. We would say it in anything else, right? Except for Bigfoot.
Because telepathy was already taken.
Yeah, but it's the same friggin' thing.
Yeah, but a different Bigfoot cramp had already called telepathy, you know, a Lapatis.
Yeah, but that
T1A Lapatis
right,
had already bagged the
lapsaritis.
telepathy.
Yeah, but
Lapsaritis. Whatever his fucking name is, that delusional cunt that wears a toga everywhere. That motherfucker. But he bags that, and the other Bigfoot camps are like, well, we want to do woo, but we don't want to associate with that lunatic. So we
Well,
can't say
no.
telepathy, we say mind speak.
Yeah, it's a funny thing.
It's like why the US government is now calling UFOs UAPs. They
Right.
don't want to be associated with UFOs, with that
Right.
community.
Yeah, but mind speak is just a sort of an idea. Somebody come up with the idea, and the only explanation for it that I've heard of it, because nobody will actually claim that they came up with the word mind speak. Although somebody said, "Oh well, that's a translation of some word that somebody used in Algonquin or something like that." Okay, that's fine. You know, but does it
Yeah.
translate to mind speak? No, I mean we would translate it just like in every other case and say um, telepathy.
Right.
That's what you would say. You wouldn't say mind speak. And I mean,
Mm.
and to be honest with you, I mean, as a person who speaks a native language, it's highly unlikely that there is a word that translates to mind speak somewhere in the Indian language. But anyway, that's fine. That's just something that somebody's trying to make it sound like they're experts at something when clearly there's nothing to be an expert of. I'm still amazed that people. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, we won't go down that road.
No. Finish the thought. This is clearly bothering you.
No, I'm just saying there's a lot of experts about something that can't. I mean, how can you be an expert of something that there's no? I mean, you can be an expert of folklore. I can say that, right? You can be an expert
Yeah.
about folklore. You can be
Yeah.
an expert about animals in the woods. You can be an expert about, I mean, for example, North American creatures. You can be an expert on tracking. You can be an expert on lots of different things, but you can't be an expert on Bigfoot. You just can't. Because how do you know?
Can you be an expert on all the collected knowledge of Bigfoot?
Well, you can. You could be, you can be an expert on the canon of knowledge there is. Understanding that you cannot, well, you can be an expert on what the canon of knowledge is, but you can't be an expert on whether it's true or not. That's my opinion. You see what I'm saying?
No, well, that's a good position to take. I appreciate that.
Yeah, because I mean, it's this and the same thing about, and eh, you know, everybody wants to get in a fight about whether footprints are evidence or foot casts are evidence or not, or all these different things. And there's I
It
would
is all evidence. It's just you don't know if it's real evidence or fake evidence.
right, right, and that's the thing that I was always worried about. But most of us now have cameras that have lidar cameras on it. You know what I mean? And we don't even know why is anybody still taking foot casts anyway at this point in time? You know, if you have a lidar
Because they
camera,
look good when you show them off.
yeah, I really don't think so. I don't think that they look as good as a
If you go to a Bigfoot conference and you set up your stall and you've got foot casts and pictures and all sorts, that looks more impressive than just pictures.
You think so? I because
Yeah,
I
people like to hold things
yeah,
and see it with their hand. If you hand them a foot cast, they can hold it and go, "Whoa, that's pretty Bigfooty right there."
yeah, well, that's true. I mean, that is true that you can do that, but I mean, I mean, all right, I'll just say this now.
Gabby raises a good point there that giant panda and mountain gorillas were mythological animals before they were discovered. Very true, especially the gorilla. A lot of scientists never took the gorilla seriously until remains were discovered, until they found them.
Yeah. Oh no, I understand about the panda, and I understand about the mountain gorilla too. Um, Interestingly
I
enough,
mean, I sympathise. To me, the panda is a mythological animal because it is so ridiculous of a creature that, yeah. It
and
is. It is absolutely ridiculous. It won't have sex. It only eats one specific thing, and it expects to compete in this day and age. No, let
yeah,
it go extinct. Let's save species that actually are making the effort to be saved.
yeah. from my standpoint of it, as a person who thinks that they've seen a Bigfoot and says that, I will say this: I'm not poo-pooing the idea that there is one. All I'm saying
Yeah.
is uh, you don't know until there's definite proof in a certain the way the science works. You know, from a scientific standard question, you can say, does this exist? And you can say maybe. From a mathematical standpoint, which is the ultimate proof in science, right? I mean, you don't prove science with anything other than math, really. But
Right.
the ultimate thing is until you have one, you have none. That's really the way it is. And so therefore, technically, mathematically speaking, it doesn't exist until you prove that it does exist. That's all I'm saying. You know,
It's
as I
good. You
said,
know, Gary's saying they've got have a hand in conservation too. Absolutely, Gabby. If they're not willing to fuck each other, why should we spend money on them?
well, that's the thing.
I
The
mean,
old, the old
that's the bare minimum of keeping your species alive is having sex.
yeah, but the old pandas is you know, I mean the lengths that people go to try to have pandas mate is crazy.
It's ridiculous. There's panda porn that they show pandas. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
They've actually got filmed pandas fucking and they show it to pandas in the zoo. And they're like, this is how you do it. And
So
it's like,
it's more of an instructional video rather than a
no, it's porn. It's porn. It's trying to get them in the mood. I bet they feed them oysters as well.
Wait,
Like
so
we're eating.
it's not like, okay, look at this. This is an example of how you would do it. It's more like the panda comes and says, do you need me to clean your pool or something? And then
Yeah.
next, did you order the panda pizza?
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
I'm
here's
just
the
here to clean your panda pool.
yes,
I've got a big one for you. Meat feast stacked.
yeah. Well, here's
No,
the
Gabby, it's a real thing. Google it. It actually exists.
so,
But
you
the
know,
point
that,
is,
the point of the matter is like I said, it's one of those things where I mean, it's very very difficult to think. I mean, and one of the things that I find interesting about it is when you try to take things back to the beginning of it. One of the things that's always interesting about you know, science or folklore or something like that, and you know, and I do study a lot of different things about folklore around the world. I mean, I've got you know, the sort of I've tried to take, you know, college level courses on folklore, but you know, when you try to do these things, there are sort of prototypical stories that every culture has. In other words, you can talk about Celtic mythology and Native American mythology, and you'll find a lot of the same features in the way that the stories are. And so you've got to try to take it to a point where you can come back to the center point and say, where did this originate from? And so because again, this might be the idea of as with and people don't want to think about it. The story of the wild man in Europe goes back to Greek times and before. I mean, obviously the very first novelistic story that's written down in cuneiform is the story of, you know, you know, Enkidu, who is a, you know, non-human, large, hairy creature, right? So you think
right.
about it from that standpoint. You say, okay, can that be a Bigfoot? Maybe, right? Maybe you can say maybe that's a Bigfoot. So you take that back and forward, and then you say to that, so the idea of this naturalistic man who is against out with society, is that a question of actual thing, or is that just sort of a metaphor? And did we bring that here? In other words, we don't have a way of really proving that the Indians talked about Bigfoot before white man came here. That could have been a story that a white man told an Indian and then retook into his culture and used it that way. You see what I'm saying? Because you've got a lot of the same stories about, for example, troll people who put children in a basket, take them away, just like the basket Oberus or whatever you want to call it on the Pacific Northwest side. So all I'm saying is that a universal concept of of a creature or not? I mean, I don't know. That's the thing. We will never know from that standpoint. So, I mean, at a lot of different times, are we reshaping what people's beliefs are? Because even though Native Americans will say, "Well, we believe in a mountain giant or a tribe of people who live in the mountain that basically uh, left to stay away from the white man whenever they came, and so they didn't want to have anything to do with it, so they left and went out to live in nature and everything like that." That's fine, but it doesn't mean it's a big hairy. Doesn't mean it's a Bigfoot. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
part of the thing. Whenever you start to deal with these old ancient legends where you've got semi-divine sort of demigod creatures that are Bigfoot, then you know, trying to change it to whatever you want it to be is a little bit hard too. And I think that's one of the things that we do all the time in Bigfoot is change things that, you know, because like I said, and I've said this before, I have I have stories in native language that happened before Patterson Gimlin came out, and the words that they describe to say about these stories were not necessarily of a Bigfoot type. They were of a giant type. So therefore, is Bigfoot? I mean, and even the word Sasquatch is a made-up word. You see what I'm saying? It's not an actual native word. It's a word that we use because supposedly somebody came up with a word in central BC. That tribe up there used a word that sounded like that, supposedly. But you don't know that's true. You know, that's just one of those things that everybody says. So it's a very
Gabby's brought up Alexander the Great Cynocephali, which is a pretty funny story.
well. I mean, this is the thing. With all these different things. Anytime you start to deal with any mythology, you start to get this idea of what it is, and then we backfill. You know what I mean? The giant squid becomes the sort of kraken. You know what I mean? We like to backfill into these different things.
They are krakens, to be fair. I mean, giant squid is huge.
Right. Well,
I just feel like
I'm not saying that's not the truth, but I'm just saying that's one of those things where we find something in nature, and then that goes in. That's where we came up with this idea. It's like whenever they
found the other one, didn't they? They found the colossal squid.
right,
I'm just like, well, giant squid isn't big enough. Now we've got ourselves a colossal squid.
right. Well, and I'm sure that some of the stories did come from that, but is that necessarily what we're talking about? I mean, the idea
Definitely.
of
If you're on one of those old creaky wooden ships late at night, back when giant squid come to the surface at night, and
it would have been
somewhat infrequently. And if you're in an old wooden ship and you see one of them giant squid lazily next to your vessel, it's going to scare the shit out of you.
Oh no!
Secondly, when they do fight sperm whales, most of the modern thought is that they're trying to get out of their mouth, but they do fight them. So if a sperm whale comes to the surface with a giant squid in its mouth, it's going to look like the squid is attacking the whale. Right. And that's going to be scary as well, especially, again, to old whalers.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And people don't realize how small sailing ships are. I mean, yeah. I've seen, like if you go and ever look at a recreation of this, like the Golden Hind, for example, It's tiny. You know what I mean? It is
Yeah.
tiny. You think somebody sailed around the world in that? You know what I mean? It's the size of an RV. You know what I mean? Like an RV that you ride down the road in. I mean, can you imagine like have being in something that's that size and then I'm just gonna go around the world in that? You know, on the
That's
ocean
how
and
they
that.
rolled.
I understand. I mean, you know, I don't know if it was bravery or stupidity or whatever, but for sure,
It
um,
was the only way of travel. Years in the future, when we've got self-driving cars as a norm, people are going to be like, I can't believe anyone ever drove these death machines manually. You know,
yeah, if we ever get that far, and it could be.
no, pretty sure we're going to get that far fairly quick.
You think we're going to get to
In
to
my lifetime, I'm guessing self-driving cars are going to be a thing.
well, I think they're a thing now, but I think that there's a difference between the transition of it between
Oh,
me,
I mean, right, the norm. It might not be in my lifetime where it becomes the norm, but
right. Well, that's the thing that I think is interesting as well too, is in the fact that it seems like to me from that standpoint we've got more of we had come to from a division of the haves and the have-nots 100 years ago. If you look at the turn of the century, there were
yeah.
the haves and the have-nots, and then we sort of had a middle class for a while in the 20th century, and now we're going back to the haves and the have-nots. So maybe on the roads there will be some people with uh, self-driving cars, and then maybe my grandkids will be like Oliver Twist. Please, sir, can I have some more? Just depends on how.
Yeah, eventually, it'll become the norm. All cars will have them. I don't know if it's going to be in my lifetime, but when that does happen, people are going to say, "I can't believe anyone ever drove these things manually."
Oh, I know. Yeah, no, I understand. I understand.
People sailed the seas in wooden ships because that was the best technology that was available to us. And it wasn't always fun. Look what happened to the Essex, the
Mhm.
ship behind the Moby Dick thing that got literally sunk by a whale.
Yeah. Well, what I can't believe is, Richard, that the health and safety allowed them to travel outside. They shouldn't have been able to leave the port. You can't
Oof,
do that.
topical.
You, well, I
Shots
remember.
fired.
Well, no, I remember. When we were going, it's like it's a fascinating thing to me because in my lifetime I came from the standpoint of literally anything was on the table on the cards when I was a child, and then by the time I was 20, you couldn't do anything because of health and safety. You know what I mean? That we came from you know man up. It's your own fault. You got hurt too. If there's blame, there's a claim in my lifetime. And how did that change so fast? Like no win, no fee. What I mean? Did when you were growing up, did you just remember that the whole time? It's just like, okay, you chop off your toe, you get 10 grand or something. That sort of idea of the everybody claims for stubbing their toe or
No, when I was in
something.
school, if you got hurt, you got hurt. The teachers were like, rub some dirt in it, and walk it off.
Yeah, but then at a
Right.
certain point in time, it did change. It's like now,
The
it's like
Moby Dick thing. Yeah, that was the Essex story, where the sperm whales sunk the ship, they ended up in a lifeboat, and the only survivors only survived because they resorted to cannibalism. It was it was obviously changed radically in the book, but that was
right.
the true story of the Moby Dick.
What I don't understand about that, Richard, was they're whalers, right? But why
Yeah.
didn't they fish for fish? Is it just easier to say, look at old Jim lad over there? He's looking yummy.
They didn't have any fishing equipment.
Oh yeah,
They literally just had the boat.
and but they yeah. Just had the boat. Oh well,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, one of the boats tried landing on an island, didn't really work out for them. They ended up dead.
oh, it was a tragedy, right? I mean, and wasn't didn't the guy come back?
Well, it depends how pro whale you are.
Well, as of the time, it was a tragedy, right? Because
Yeah.
nobody gave a crap about whales back then.
No. They let's see. There was this one woman that was very angry at them because they'd eaten her son. She probably did think it was thought it was a tragedy. Um, it's a massive thing, you know. That's what it was like back then, though. You know, you had to sail out on the open ocean, risk certain death and cannibalism to make a buck.
Well, I mean, in a lot of ways, for a long period of time. I mean, if you think about it, and how long in it uh, was when you, like, even if you think about prairie times or even till the 20s or 30s, when before a house had a telephone in it, you know, somebody could leave the house and you wouldn't know if they were coming home until they came home or something like that. You know what I mean? That the
Yeah.
old. I mean, it seems like now we've got a running commentary of what everything's happening. You know, it's like if your kid leaves the house now, it's like, okay, call me when you get there. Call me, you know, whenever you're leaving. Call me here. Call me there. You wouldn't have that luxury back then. It would be more of a thing of, you know, see you in 4 days. You know what I mean? Hopefully.
What back then, yeah, it'd be like I might be back in a year or two, maybe.
Right.
Expect me when you see me. I
Right.
mean, look at what happened with the Donner Party. That was like a 3 month trip. Just like
Right.
the
But I
idea
think
is that that was just the way it is. It's so alien to us, isn't it? That
right.
someone would be like, okay, I'm leaving, see you in a year or so.
Right. Well, I don't think a lot of people know, or like really think about it. But I mean, at the time of whenever people were leaving, and this was in, you know, true of Britain, Ireland, and places like that, you know, well into almost the 1900s or whatever, um, that, you know, almost you'd have like a little wait for somebody before they got on the boat to leave, because technically that was the last time you were ever going to see them. You know what I mean? It was like
Yeah.
you didn't expect to get a letter from them. You didn't expect for anything else. They were going to America. You didn't know what it was going to be like. You're never going to see them again. It was almost like, in a lot of ways, that was it. That was it. They left. We don't know what happened to them. And that was it. It was almost like dying and being reborn in another country. Even though um, there's quite a lot of, you know, a lot of people who came to America didn't like it. You know, it's kind of an interesting thing where I've always found it interesting whenever you're dealing with records of people who emigrated to America, how many people came back. Now, whether that was from sickness or whether that was from disillusion from the idea of, yeah, America's not as great as it was. I mean, like New York wasn't actually paved with gold and stuff like that. People would just go and go, yeah, I could live in shit here or I can live in shit in America, but it's still shit. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it's always an interesting thing. I mean, you know, look at yourself. I mean, you emigrated to America, moved back. I mean, I would, I would, or have done it several times. I mean, back and forth. So, I mean, it's not always as easy as all that. So, anyway,
It was a different time.
yep, for sure, for sure.
I mean, you know, we've gone through our own problems. The pandemic is going to be spoken about in history classes for years to come.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what is thought of this time. You know, realistically, um, You would think that it's almost, from a standpoint of it, you would think, okay, well, this is the time where people started to act, well, they should be acting more individually. You know what I mean? Where you can go to the store and get the food the way you want it. You can go on the internet and get the information the way you want it. You can get the music the way you want it, when you want it, how you want it. Same with your video and everything like that. So, from the one standpoint, you'd say this should be the time where people thought more individually than any other time in history, right? We weren't all eating the same thing at the same times because of the fact that, that was when the harvest was. you know we have refrigeration, freezing. We can have strawberries in the middle of December and things like that nobody else could have really thought of ever before. But at the same time, from a lot of ideological standpoints, we've never been more sort of caught up in the same slipstream. You know what I mean? There's two main schools of thought, and that's it. You're this or you're this. That's it. Two different
Either
things.
conservative or liberal. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that's it. And that's your only way of thinking. And if you start to skirt around the outside of that and say, I remember whenever um, I started to not agree with some things that were in my chosen pathway. And I said, yeah, I don't think that's right. I think that's kind of bullshit. And then then all of a sudden, dude, it was just like, it was like, okay, you slowly get moved to the side. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, you're not thinking like we're thinking. So we're slowly going to be put over here into the unacceptable pile. So I mean, I think that is the way that it is. But we don't get taught. We don't think about it in that fact. You're either this or you're that, or you're neither. But we don't ever talk about the neither, right? Because the neither doesn't have power. We don't have power to say this is the way it should be. You know. But
Yeah, but no one cares about that. So no one cares about fence sitters, Kevin.
Well, it's not a question of being a fence sitter. It's a
That's
question.
totally what it is. You're either a liberal or a conservative. If you're not one of those, then you're sitting on the fence. You're basically a communist.
Well, I always look at it like this: if you're not one or the other, you're probably a rationalist.
Oof.
You're probably saying to yourself, I can live with other people doing this, and I can live with other people doing this as long as I'm here. But a lot of people would say,
dangerous thoughts, Kevin.
Huh?
Dangerous thoughts.
Well, I know, but I mean, I guess you're right in the fact that I am not thinking of the extremities of the world is going to boil to death in 5 years, or we're all going to be overrun by Satan's minions in 5 years. I'm sorry.
I feel like that would be an upgrade on its way. I'm just calling it like I see it.
Do you think that
Satan takes over? Are we really going to notice?
Well, I mean, that's the interesting part about it. I mean, there's an honest to God question about the fact that, are the people who use biblical arguments technically, if you look at the Bible, I mean, you know what I'm saying? There's nobody in the Bible that you can look at, that's a leader today that you can't sort of fit a lot of characteristics of the Antichrist to it. You know what I mean? Whether it's Joe Biden, whether it's Elon Musk, whether it's Trump, whether it's that. I mean,
I'd say Boris Johnson, but I don't think he's smart enough to be the Antichrist.
Well, you see, yeah, but Boris Johnson has to be liked for 42 months. So there you go.
That's never gonna happen.
At that point in time, I don't know.
He threw a massive celebration party for winning the vote of no confidence. I was like, you're celebrating because you avoided being fired.
Yeah.
That you were going to be fired, and because you're doing such a terrible job, but you didn't get fired, and you're celebrating that.
But do you not think that that's what politicians do? It just has to be good enough. You know what I mean?
It's not though.
Well, yeah, but I mean, but the difference, they don't think about it in terms of anything. I don't think that they do. I don't think they think about it in terms of whether you're happy or not. They're just thinking of 50% or 50 plus one, 50 plus one. That's how they think. That's how I mean, it doesn't really matter if you win by, you get 98 out of 100 votes or 51 votes out of 100 votes. You're still in power. That's it. Whether you limp across the finish line or you blaze across it first, it doesn't matter. You're still first. So to be honest with you, that's it. Because power is not, I mean, you're not, well, politicians do it for the power, right? They're not doing it for me. They're not doing it for you. They're not doing it for the country. They're not doing it for anything else. They're doing it for their power, right? And power is not proportionate. You know what I mean? So you're either in or you're out. So they could give a shit whether it's by a lot or not. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, for him, I could understand why he said, okay, yeah, still in power. Fuck yeah, let's rock it. You know what I mean? Let's do it.
Let's just keep going.
I fooled these people for another bit. We should celebrate that.
Yeah, the next general election is probably in 2024.
Yeah, 2 years down
A
the
lot
road.
of people are asking, is Boris still going to be Prime Minister when that happens? And I say, probably.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, at this point in time, what are we going to do? Why go to the bother of it at this point in time? You know, because I think in a lot of ways, there's we will. I mean, the 2020. I mean, you know how it is. I mean, America's talked about the 2022 elections since 2018. You know what I mean? It just seems like that's all.
2024.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, but I know, but we've still got this one coming up. So you've got the one where Biden wins in 2020, and then you've got the one where probably what will happen is the House flips, the Senate might flip in 2022, which then at a point in time just makes it so that, again, nothing happens. So we go from election where nothing happens to another election where really nothing happens, but you still don't have the hope that maybe something can happen. And then we'll go to the 2024 election where either apparently we'll get a king or we'll still have a democracy, because that's how they portray it in America. Like 2024, that's going to be the end of, well, no, they make it out like 2022 is going to be the end of viable elections. And then after that, if these people get in that are supposedly anti, that are into this party and don't believe that elections are good, then we will never have another free election again. But some people already think that we don't have free elections.
Phil's in the chat. Hey Phil, how's it going?
So that's interesting. Do
you think Trump's actually going to run in 2024?
That's a good question. I mean,
I would vote for him. I'm not going to lie.
I think it's interesting that it depends on how you really think about him as a person. Do you think if he's in it for the grift, he'll take all the money and not run and let DeSantis run? Because I think DeSantis is cut from the same cloth as him, and I think in a lot of ways he's trying to out-Trump Trump now, because of the fact that Trump is not in the general zeitgeist all the time. Not everybody talks about him all the time anymore, which is the kiss of death, which is good. So I mean, I think he's actually enjoying this January 6th thing because people are talking about him again. There's no bad thing as bad press, you know what I mean? So people are going to talk about it. These people are going to be outraged and they're going to say, oh, well, this is it. Then other people are going to say, no, that's not it. Either way, you look at it from the standpoint of that, people are talking about him. So if you like Trump, you're not going to stop liking him. That's the way that goes.
I miss him. It was funny.
You just have to get all those people to vote and none of the other people to vote. But that's a big, because like a lot of people who vote for Biden don't like Biden. They just don't like Trump. The question to me is, more than anything else, is Biden going to run in 2024? Because he said he
Can't
wouldn't.
imagine.
He said he wouldn't.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Look, I was genuine because Nikki and me had this conversation not that long ago. I was genuinely surprised that he's lasted as long as he had, because I was seriously expecting him to get the job and then quit and make Kamala president.
Yeah, but I don't know if that. I mean, like, she's disappeared, right?
Yeah, that's it. She's vanished.
She's not around. I mean, from that standpoint, I don't think. I think I mean, in 2024, you have to start off with like a new person, because I don't think you could get either of them to do it. But then again, this is always the problem that Democrats have, trying to field somebody that's not 110 years old.
Let's just do it again, man. Let's have Hillary versus Trump again. It was great.
Well,
it was fun. It was like the best presidential election ever. Hillary versus Trump.
Right.
Because Biden versus Trump, that was just everyone was like, I'm just voting for Biden because he's not Trump. I'm like, well, yeah, I get it, but you can't base your country's politics on the guy not being the other guy. But Hillary versus Trump was awesome because they were both dickheads. Yes. It didn't matter who won.
Right.
Everyone was like, I don't want to vote for Hillary because, she's a bitch, and I don't want to vote for Trump because he's a dick. So, it was genuinely a close run thing.
Here's my opinion on that. Right. Because a lot of the shine of the American system came off whenever Bill Clinton was president. Even though at the time it seemed like everybody loved him, blah, 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 supposedly. The fact that he was not sort of removed for office about lying about it. Actually, and let's put it this way. Everybody lies. Okay. I get that. That's fine. Everybody lies. But he got caught and got to stay in office after that because basically he was set up by his side and wasn't censured or anything like that. Really had no consequences for having this affair with this young girl. And so that's what really started it. There was the Nixon thing, but Nixon resigned. You know what I mean? So yeah, Nixon was a piece of crap. That's fine. He resigned. Okay. Did Reagan and the first Bush do something wrong? Yes. Again, you've got Iran-Contra, you've got those different things in there. Those are all things that were technically, in my opinion, worse than getting a blowjob in the office. But he should have just said, yes, I got a blowjob in the office.
Absolutely.
That's what he should have just said.
It wouldn't have been such a big deal if he'd just been like, yeah, I got a blowy in the Oval Office. What?
Yeah. Does that
make me less qualified to be president?
Right.
Because I got a blowjob. Shut your mouth. Next question. That's what Trump would have done.
Yeah.
If it was Trump, that's exactly what Trump would have done. And that's why I liked him. He was great.
So that's what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is because he wasn't impeached and removed from office, that became a problem. That set the precedent.
Now, why was the impeachment ever on the table?
Which one?
For Clinton.
Because he lied.
Oh, right.
He perjured himself. He perjured himself.
That makes sense.
Now, whether or not that was because Ken Starr was up his butthole looking for shit he shouldn't have been, that's a question of for the ages. But that's not regardless of that. It's not an okay. Like I said, it's not an excuse for what you did. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, Phil does raise a good point there. It is funny how they shouted from the mountaintop that Kamala was the first black woman vice president, and now that they got her elected, she's vanished. So,
yeah, she's gone. Totally gone.
Who do I see as a new Prime Minister, Alan? Ugh, bloody hell. James O'Brien. He should be the Prime Minister.
I thought you were going to say James Brown, the Prime Minister of Funk.
I don't know who would be the next Prime. Probably Jacob Rees-Mogg, knowing how this country's running. That's probably the next Prime Minister.
Scrap it. Just burn it all down and get a new. I mean, I think
we need a new Guy Fawkes, and we need one who's actually going to finish the job.
Well, well, I don't. I mean, you can't say that. All I'm saying is,
I'm just saying, you know, if someone was going to blow up Parliament, would that be a big deal? Not when it was in session.
It's really too bad.
When it was deserted, you know, obviously an empty building. I'm not wishing death on anyone.
No. But it really is too bad that you can't say, you know, hit the reset button. It's too bad you can't hit Control Alt Delete on your country and
it's
sort of
F4 now.
Yeah, well, that we could say, okay, hey, listen.
Okay, this is getting ridiculous. We're just going to turn it on and off again, off and on again. That's what we're going to do.
But what I'm saying is reinstall, reinstall government. You know what I mean?
Reinstall tri-party.
Yeah, we should just start with the thing that says, okay, there's going to be no political parties. Write down what you're all about, and we'll vote for you.
America.exe has stopped working.
Right, and we're not. And guess what? Even though the Supreme Court says it's okay, you can't donate anonymously to whoever you want for as much as you want to a super PAC, because I don't know who thought that was going to work out really great. The Citizens United decision. Let's go ahead and do that. That's crazy. But anyway, and then you wonder why there's corruption. You know, the super PACs are deciding all these things. You know,
well, we whine about corruption, but if you were in their position, Kevin, would you not sell out as much as humanly possible?
Oh, you know, like I said, I've said this. Absolutely. I've always said that it's a matter of position with me. I'm on this side I'm on this side looking in, so I'm going to say corruption. And if I was on the inside looking out, I would just say, well, that's you know, maybe next time the guy will win. You know, that's the way it is. You just have to try it harder, and you know, don't worry about it. We got it all taken care of. It's all in hand. Don't worry about it. We know what you need.
Yeah.
Because this is a this is a representational government. So therefore, I will represent you as poorly as I can, as long as I'm making the most amount of money.
What do you think about the Electoral College?
Well, you see, this is the argument, isn't it? I mean, you know, the thing about it is if we didn't have the Electoral College, we wouldn't have had this January 6th thing, right? We wouldn't have had that because of the
fact. What makes you say that?
Well, because basically the what they were doing that day at January 6th was counting the electors coming from the state. In other words, it would have just come if we didn't have the Electoral College, it would be okay. He got this amount of votes, she got this amount of votes, or he got this one, they got that one, and okay, end of story. That's it. Person with the most amount of votes won. That's not how we do it for president in the United States. You know, so what we do is we say, okay, that means now in Washington State, for example. So in other words, let's put it this way. If you vote for a Republican in Washington State, you might as well just stay at home for president, because it doesn't matter. We have 6 electoral votes in Washington State, No matter what happens, they're all going to go to whoever the Democrat is because it's an all or nothing system. So all or nothing, they're going to say 6 votes go to X. So this is where you come up with this idea of by 300 and some electoral votes, this person wins and this other person gets 211 electoral votes. So that's the difference, right? Because we have the electoral college. And so that's the thing. So you basically say, okay, the slate of electors that were put into place by certain states like Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, Georgia, um, who should they have gone for? They all went for this one person, and so alternately they could have gone for this other person. So that's how they flip it. You see, that's how they do it. So the idea of going there and certifying the electors, which is what the January 6th thing was all about, becomes this like last sort of point of a resuscitation of the system. So no matter which way you look at it, and I look at it like this: either this January 6th, people say, well, why are you watching this January 6th committee thing? Well, I say, well, how can you not watch it? You know what I mean? Because it's not about the riots. There's two tangible arguments that you're making out of that. One is that the Democrats stole the election, at which point in time somebody needs to prove it because nobody has, or the Republicans were trying to dodge the situation to not put it into case, at which point in time you need to prove that. I mean, it's not about whether somebody came there and hit somebody over the head or something like that. That happened. You know what I'm saying? That happened. The riot happened. The question is, at one point in time, who stole it? If something was stolen one way or the other, it was stolen. That's what we should find out. Was it or wasn't it? Because you can't have it both ways and not have some kind of a fissure that causes problems down the road. If that election was quote unquote stolen, then every election is going to be quote unquote. Why even have an election? You see what I'm saying? And it's like, from the standpoint of a lot of people who are running for government now, who says, I'm running to prove that this was stolen. Well, if the elections were stolen, why wouldn't they just steal it from you so you wouldn't get into power so that they could say it was stolen? So then, of course, then it's stolen for them. They don't win. So then it's, you know what I'm saying? Everything is like, this is it now. Nobody loses. It's like at a certain point in time, it's like if everybody after every football match said, yeah, but they cheated. You know what I mean? And then you had a
it's like that scene from Blackadder, isn't it? Where he's like talking about German spies as filthy, dirty, underhanded Huns fighting their underhanded shadow war. And then they mentioned British spies, and he's like, brave lads, splendid lads.
Salt of the earth.
Risking life and limb for old Blighty. It's the same thing.
It's the truth. I mean, that is the thing, right? That's the idea of the nationalistic thing, where we but that's the way it has to be, right? We have to run down the other nation and build ourselves up, because that's the way that, especially in a war, because I mean, you have to dehumanize the enemy, and in some cases, that's what we're doing here now. Who's causing the dehumanization? That's what I want to know. Because again, I don't necessarily believe that this is an issue of just neighbor versus neighbor. I think this is puppet master in another country versus puppet master in another country. So again, if you can de facto get people in America to start fighting amongst themselves from a remote location for a couple of $1 million in Facebook ad money, you're laughing. You're high-fiving each other all the way to the end. You know what I mean? You're not spending $40 billion to send. I mean, you look at it like this, right? We are fighting a proxy war in Ukraine by sending money there, $40 billion. right? And then the Russians are sending that. I'm of the opinion that Russians is fighting a proxy war here in America by spending a couple of $1 million on Facebook ads and getting and fake accounts and everything like that basically says this is that and everything else. And then at which point in time nobody believes that it's coming from there or whatever, but it could be coming from anywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the future of warfare. The future of warfare is sort of ideological, and it's not necessary. I mean, because look at it like this point in time, when you've got people on the internet on Facebook that says, "I really don't give a shit about January 6th hearings. If I have to pay $5 a gallon for petrol or gasoline," at that point in time, dude, you've already lost. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, as my granny would say, we've already figured out you're a hooker. We just have to figure out how much you cost. You know what I'm saying? So if it was a quarter a gallon and you had to be under Mao Zedong, would you do it? You know what I mean? At what point in time does the price of one commodity dictate whether you should have this type of a government or another type of a government? That's ridiculous. That's my opinion. Now, I always understand that these memes are all an oversimplification, but that's part of the problem as well. That people don't think. But anyway.
Lots of interesting things came up tonight. We dissected the political landscape and had a really good chat, I feel.
Well, the thing about it is like I said, I mean, everybody's entitled to think what they think. I look at it like that. Doesn't make them a bad person because.
Oh, wait. Let me just bring this all around in a big circle. You're entitled to think whatever you want, unless you think you're trans demon. Then you're not.
Well, how would we refer to somebody as that? I mean,
I have no idea. I didn't listen to the pronoun garbage for that.
I'm not. I mean, would it be because? I mean, is it just a made up thing, or is it like a me?
Yeah, it's totally made up. Like I watched a TikTok video about it, and I sat there going, "This is like the most wasted shit I've ever done."
Yeah, I'm always of the belief
and played Minesweeper, and my time would have been more productively spent.
Right. Well, I always look at it like this. If you go by old, British, thing, you refer to Cthulhu as the Master of Death, and then Sir after that.
Well, that will wrap us up for this week.
Oh, no, sorry. The Breaker of Worlds. I'm sorry.
Despite the hopes of many, where we will be discussing, I don't know, whatever.
We'll figure something out.
We'll figure something out for next week.
I always like it whenever we just come in and sort of bring up something topical. Because of the fact that when we do a set thing, sometimes it doesn't always work out because of the fact that there's something that has happened this week. Of course. Oh no, one thing I wanted to say is, did you see that old man Finnegan? Biden fell off his bike today.
No, I hadn't seen it.
He fell off his. He was riding a bike and he fell off. He's okay. Just so Phil knows he's okay.
He's an old dude. Why was he riding a bike in the first place?
Well, no, I think it was great. I mean, like I said, I mean, I was like, when I was talking to somebody about it who called me, somebody called me to tell me, and I was like, oh, is he all right? And I was, wondering about it because obviously I said, you know what it's like to live in a country where probably 165 million people are probably going, okay, they're kind of laughing under their breath about him falling off his bike. I mean, that's a tough room. You know what I mean? It's a tough room to work. And, so, but I mean, and if you're the president and you're outside, you've got a camera on you all the time. Like, how many hours of video do they have of him riding a bike? Probably, thousands of hours. But the
A
only
lot of hours of bike
Yeah.
rides. Yeah.
and the only time you ever see it is whenever he falls off. I mean,
Such is life.
that's I always said like who was the I mean remember when everybody fell down the stairs off Air Force One for a long time. There's I mean like that I mean it's just like if you can make it through and then there was what you mean like I think Ford fell down the steps. Trump came out. I don't know if that was true, whether he had toilet paper on the bottom of his foot or whether that was like added as a deep fake. But at this point in time, there's nothing that it's like sooner or later somebody's going to make it. I just assume everybody's a human being anymore, and that you're going to do something because like I can't judge anybody, because like I've literally failed to make it to the bathroom several times in my life. So what am I going to get upset about? You know what I mean?
Sooner or later, we always talk about how you shit yourself in.
Well, no, I'm just saying that if I was the president, I probably would have fell off the bike and shit myself. Are you into your fourth beer now? You're like, oh, fuck.
No.
I was just
Anyway.
wondering what that clinking noise was.
Oh, I was playing with something. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. You got glass
That'll
balls.
wrap us. Yeah, pretty Chinese worry balls. That'll
we didn't talk
wrap
about
us up for this week. We will return next week, despite the hopes of many. It is good night from me, and it's good night from Kevin.
Goodbye, everyone.
Shooting sucks.